significant about the idea of predicting the future.
Yeah.
Because you can predict something that may happen in the future which seems so horrible and terrible, and yet because you have an aversion from that, you don't want to experience the worst possible outcome. So therefore, your very aversion from that is changing the future. So therefore, at the end, you're not even telling the future. Think of what is the consequences. If there is something that's genuinely a telling of the future, how does that modify your psychology? The very modification of your psychology changes the outcome of the future.
Yeah.
So the only way that these predictions of the future can be 100% accurate, I mean 100%, maybe some elements of it may turn out to be true, but you cannot remove from the equation the fact that knowing what may be in store for you in the future modifies your thinking and it modifies your behavior. And if it does that, then you're modifying the future. So therefore, how much value is there really in this whole concept of telling the future? And I'm not saying, remember, I'm not saying there's no such thing. You can, within certain boundaries, look at your present reality, see what are the tendencies that are working there, what are the inclinations, just like predicting the weather forecast. And from looking at that, you can say, such and such may be likely to happen. But take it with a grain of salt. Nothing is absolutely guaranteed. And you're taking a very narrow, limited perspective, not taking into consideration all of the more complex elements of life, which are not in your control. Are you in control of the politics of the day? Are you in control of the condition of the economy or the stock market? Right? Are you in control in something as simple as crossing the street and encountering just an unfortunate person behind the wheel who's not in his right senses and decides that he just wants to run you over? Such psychopaths do exist in the society. All you need to encounter them is just to be at the wrong place and at the wrong time. Right? We want to live in the illusory comfort of free will because it gives us security in our knowledge. And the feeling of being security in our knowledge gives us the feeling of being in a protected universe with a special importance. Right? That's very ego-inflating. Very ego-inflating. And therefore, many of these ideas about predicting the future can be extremely ego-inflating. I think it's very irresponsible for someone who claims to be telling the future to just do so carelessly, just giving out boons, giving out gifts, without much discrimination. Because even if you predict something horrible is going to happen, if the person believes it, he may go out of his way to make it happen. Remember what we said before. There are ways where your unconscious can pull you towards situations because your conscious mind is not the master that's in control. Your unconscious is the master. Your conscious mind is a puppet in the hands of the puppeteer of the unconscious. This is why real inner transformation, you shouldn't think of it so much in terms of so much changing your conscious mind. That will certainly happen the way that you consciously experience life. But that should happen as a byproduct of going much deeper. Transform on a primitive, base, instinctive level the structure of your unconscious, because that's where all the real forces are taking place. That's where the real master lies. So transform that, and everything else that happens on the surface is just going to be a mirror reflection of this. So it's totally irresponsible. You just tell something, you don't consider the consequences of how it might modify their thinking in ways which may be unhelpful. Or it may be actually helpful. Both are possible. But the reality is you do not know 100% for sure. So maybe in some cases it's better just to keep quiet and keep it to yourself. Some people make a big deal about performing miracles, like Jesus walking on water, changing water into wine, healing the sick, raising the dead, giving hearing to a man who lost his ear. And if such a Jesus really existed, and I think if there was a Jesus, a much more noble type of Jesus can be found in other scriptures, like the Gospel of Thomas, which wasn't included as the 4 main Gospels that are in the modern Bible. That's a much more noble Jesus. Look at the Gospel of Thomas, read the 42 sayings, and some of them could have easily been stated by any other Zen master. They're really of refined insight. You look at them, you shouldn't just jump to conclusions and judge things based on first appearances. Whoever wrote those statements, and wherever they come from, whether it's a historical Jesus or some other charlatan pretending it to be otherwise, they are statements of real, genuine insight. You should not zoom through them quickly. But if there was such a Jesus, what qualities is he reinforcing by performing these miracles? Think of that. You're teaching people to be fascinated with superficial appearances, which anyway, there's always going to be skeptics who will say, oh, maybe it's sleight of hand. Maybe it's just a magic trick and a work of illusion, which if you go to India, there are some people who do this as a profession. So at the end, you don't really 100% know. Or someone who's sensible will take a step back and say, all right, maybe this guy is just playing tricks of illusion. So at the end, what real wisdom are you expressing through this? Okay, you can have a positive point of view and say, it elevates the human mind as to what is possible in the human potential, and it makes people believe in things that are dimensions that are outside of your ordinary awareness. But maybe that can be a motivation, but you know what kind of a sound and clear mind you need to have for that? For the general public, it's not a good remedy. Especially in Jerusalem, where people who were, at that time, in Jesus' time, where people were poor, who were living under slavery of the Roman Empire, who were not well educated. Right? What kind of conclusions do you think they're going to draw? You think they're not going to be superstitious? Of course. And on the other hand, if you perform these miracles in public, certain greedy individuals will start clinging to you. Please perform a miracle for me. Heal my grandmother who's severely sick right now. Give me the financial stability that I need. They're going to be begging and begging for things which ultimately don't lead them to any greater self-knowledge. It's irresponsible. You have to be careful with these sort of things, right? So these fools who are the Christian fanatics, who the only justification they give for Jesus being the Son of God is that he performed such otherworldly feats. That's very childish, very naive.